Hi there. Have you ever wondered what a random internet stranger thinks of the alcohol that you drink? Well, wonder no further. Here I am. We're going to be pouring over some alcohol of the more popular varieties, starting with the things that I actually have on my shelf. Mostly because I'm bored and doing this for fun. And if it looks like I'm reading off of something, it's because I am. Now, actually, typically, most people have a preference of alcohols. You have your whiskeys, your gin, vodka, rum. I don't know why I blanked on that last one. Anyway, whatever alcohol's out there, everyone has their choices, everyone has their preferences. Personally, I typically do a lot of whiskey, bourbon, scotch. You might be thinking, but wait a minute, isn't that all the same thing? No, it's not. Today, we're going to start explaining why. Now, we're going to do a little bit series. I'm going to start with my favorites, and then we'll move on from any particular liquor to something else. In this particular case, I have chosen an unopened bottle of Larceny Barrel Proof Wheated Bourbon. Now, this is a little bit of a caveat to your more typical processes. Um, Now, let's begin with the basics, shall we? As I read off of this, totally didn't just Google it because I needed some talking points paper. Yep. Larceny is a popular wheated Kentucky straight bourbon produced by Heaven Hill Distillery, which some of you may or may not have ever heard of. They make a lot of different um, alcoholic beverages, and were on the news a few years ago for alleged practices. Neither here nor there. Known for using wheat instead of rye for a softer, sweeter taste. Larceny itself, inspired by a historical figure, being John E. Fitzgerald, offers a high-value 92 proof small batch option that often features 6 to 8 year old whiskey. Now, this is not a small batch. Small batch usually means it's taken from specific barrels, created a sort of special edition, if you will, for alcohols, which there's already special editions, so nuance. Now, in this particular case, we have a barrel proof, which means that a lot of alcohol, whiskey especially, is cut with water to so when they mix the whiskeys together to create a specific flavor profile, and then they actually water it down until it reaches a certain alcohol point that they want to bottle it at and ship out. And that results in a lighter color, lighter flavor, not as much depth, burn, in a lot of cases. Now, in this particular situation, we have a wheated bourbon. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to page 2 of my notes to explain that one. A wheated bourbon is a type of bourbon that swaps the traditional spicy rye, which is a grain, if you're not familiar. I don't know who I'm talking to, for wheat, which is a sweeter grain, as the secondary grain. So it's corn as your mash bill, and then you have a secondary grain. Typically, you have corn and then rye, which makes up a lot of bourbons, specifically. In this case, you have your corn mash and then wheat, which gives you a lighter, sweeter profile. Anyway, resulting in a smoother, softer, and sweeter taste profile compared to the typical rye-based bourbon. While standard bourbons often feature rye or a bolder, peppery or minty flavor, wheated bourbons emphasize notes of vanilla, caramel, and honey. Caramel. It's sweeter, a little bit deeper than just sugary sweet. The key differences between wheated and standard bourbon. So the mash bill, wheated bourbon usually uses a 15 to 20% added instead of rye, and giving you that sweeter, creamier, softer mouthfeel, not as bitter, stringent, drinking hand sanitizer type of which you might get with certain alcohols, especially cheap ones. Standard ones are usually on the dry side. So if you ever think about the context between sweet and dry wines, same thing. So, tasting notes we're going to be looking for is going to be sweeter things like vanilla, caramel, honey. Maybe in this particular one, because it is denser, it is not cut, we're going to be expecting more of the deeper flavors, peppery finish, spice. So if you prefer a smoother, sweeter alcohol, look for wheated bourbons and or whiskeys. So that's you're going to find Larceny. You're also going to see Maker's Mark, which is a very, very common one you'll find in restaurants, pretty much liquor store shelves, anywhere. Pappy Van Winkle, which is a high-end, more expensive version um, for those more interested in collection and nuance. There's a whole thing behind it, and there's a list going on. If you look for standard rye-based, you'll see Bullet, which is a very common one, Basil Hayden, or Hayden, um, Four Roses, single barrel, especially. Um, you'll get the idea. And that'll give you, your various flavor profiles. So for this bad boy, we are going to use this glass, and we're going to go over the tasting notes and 10 facts about Larceny bourbon. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to peel this. Once this is open, it's open. There's no two takes on this bad boy. We don't have that kind of budget. Now, it's one of my favorite things about bottles. You get that cork, satisfying. Immediately you get a lot of deep sweetness, brown sugar, molasses. That's good stuff. Yeah, I got my initials on this thing. The camera see that? I don't know if you can. Yeah, sure can. There we go. You got these special for Christmas. And I'm just doing a small pour on this bad boy. We're gonna do a little taste test, okay? We're gonna let it breathe. Going to give it a little swishy swish. So it's a little pretentious, let's be honest, but it does serve some purpose. So you're introducing oxygen. So this sealed bottle had generally all the air sucked out of it before it was, and when you reintroduce oxygen, it begins to oxidize. Oxygen does fascinating chemical little things that actually, over the course of time, can enhance or deteriorate flavor. Sometimes it'll just go stale. Sometimes it'll just stagnate, or it just doesn't change the profile at all. Sometimes it might make it taste a little better. There are people who will buy specific whiskeys that they enjoy. Leave that right there. And just make it like a half bottle. Just leave it like that and let it soak in the oxygen and turn over and absorb, and it kind of mellows a lot of it breaks down that astringency in the alcohols and gives it a much smoother, sweeter vibe. So now that it's poured and aired out, you get more of that kind of deeper alcohol scent off of it. More of a if you had a brown sugar scented hand sanitizer. And I don't like that I keep saying that. Now, I'm going to tell you this. I've never tried this before. This is the first time for everybody in this room. So, cheers. Spicy. Now, whew, that was actually hit a little harder than I thought. The flavor is actually very deep, but it's also, there's a lot of that peppery finish, very strong alcohol. Naturally, makes sense. It's a high proof. So, let's go over some facts. Fact the foist. Number one is the wheated mash bill that we already went over. So they proprietary mash blend of corn, wheat, malted barley, and emphasize those specifically for that depth in sweetness. The distillery itself is in Kentucky, so it is a true bourbon from considered Bourbon County. The original processes of being called bourbon used to be federally regulated to it had to be made a very specific way and only come out of Bourbon County, Kentucky, which is where the name came from. It does kind of smooth out. And you'll notice I took a much smaller sip that time. Now, for historical inspiration, talked a little bit about that John E. Fitzgerald guy. Now, John E. Fitzgerald was a Treasury agent, a federal agent who worked for the U.S. Treasury back in a long time ago, who allegedly would use his keys that he had for distilleries for doing inspections and things like that, where he would steal the best barrels, the best barrels out of their storehouses and sell them or serve it, keep it for himself, which is where the key in the lock comes from on the label. Part of the history. Let's see. See, now it's starting. As you get it on your tongue, it mellows out a little bit. Not bad. Either that or my tongue just gave up, surrendered. Number 4. Now, as far as similar whiskeys, if you are familiar with whiskey brands, this is in the same family as the famous Old Fitzgerald, and which old Fitzgerald, old Granddad, Pappy Van Winkle. Sorry, not old Granddad, but Pappy Van Winkle, which is a very expensive version, basically same flavor profile. Not same, but very similar. So if you don't want to spend an exorbitant amount of money on bourbon, and you want to try something that is going to taste similar, you can buy this bad boy. I actually got this one for $60 where I live. It's about average for a decent bottle of bourbon, honestly. I tend to bargain shop for bourbon, not bottom shelf, but I will spend anywhere from about $30 to $80 for something that I enjoy drinking. Most of mine are weekend sippers. So, small batch release. There's a flagship Larceny bourbon. It's a small batch, which is blended for a limited number of barrels. And then we have the barrel proof option. Now, this is a high proof, uncut, non-chill filtered, and this one is only released 3 times a year, which makes it harder to find usually. So pricing wise, pretty fair considering how markedly rare it is. And with their age statement, they don't have a minimum age statement, but they typically, according to their releases, consist of their standard is 4 to 5 years. Now their barrel proof, this one specifically, is age 6 to 8 years. Some say it can be up to 12 years. That's probably not accurate. For the flavor profile, I mean, I'm getting a lot of caramel, some honey, brown sugar, a little bit of butterscotch in there, tiny bit, not much. It's kind of there. See, once you drink it, you start picking up on these things. Otherwise, you just sound absolutely fucking pretentious. Excuse my language. And I drink it because I enjoy it, which probably says something about me. Anyway, affordability, kind of went over that. It's one of the best value for your money bourbons out there, especially wheated bourbons. You can find the standard stuff in virtually any grocery store or liquor store that has a decent bourbon aisle. Even some of the bigger chains are starting to carry it more frequently. The Walmart liquor store by me, Cub liquor store, I live in the Midwest, and a lot of local. I mean, if you have top 10 liquors, if you have Total Wine liquors, if you're out west. Anyway, it's around. It's easy to find generally. This one, not so much. So I kind of took the opportunity to grab it and hold on to it for as long as I could. Now, here's an interesting one to drop on. If you're familiar with Goose Island Bourbon County Stout, which is a very well-made, very high-end, in a way, craft beer, and it's very specifically brewed, crafted, very strong beer. It's very good quality, especially if you like craft brews and that kind of stuff. Tends to be very expensive. I mean, we're talking anywhere from $10 to $20 a can because of how they make it. And I might pick up a couple of cans during the holidays, so once or twice a year at the most. But they do offer very unique selections, and most of the time I think it's worth it. It's a once in a while thing. It's not something you want to do every weekend. That's nuts. But I digress. Larceny barrels. So after they have pumped all this liquid amber gold whiskey out of them, they are actually sold off to. They're either reused in various other degrees of fermentation, alcohol processing, but Goose Island Bourbon County Stout uses larceny barrels to age some versions of their stouts. And I did not know that, and I'm going to be finding one of those as soon as I can, because that would be very interesting. I've had other versions of some of their Big Goose Island stuff, and I'm pretty much a fan. But again, it's not something you can do all the time. So now let's talk about which one you want to choose. Yeah. So if you prefer a smoother, sweeter sip, or you're new to bourbon, get a wheated bourbon. Maybe not the barrel proof, but a wheated bourbon in general, which Larceny is an excellent way to start. I mean, generally, depending on your area and your taxes, you're probably looking at less than $30 for a big bottle like this. Now, if you want a more spicy kick, more complexity, or the stronger, bolder flavor profile, or you like cocktails like old fashions, a standard. If you want to do like old fashions because of all the sugars and stuff, don't do Larceny unless you like it sugary, super sweet, because it will be sugary, super sweet. So unless you use something like barrel proof and cut way back on simple syrup or whatever you're using, it's not going to be. It's kind of, yeah, it's not good. So go with if you like the bolder stuff, or you want to try the bolder stuff, go with barrel proof or something that's a little more, rye. Which, coming to our next point, let's see. Now for the finisher. Still burns, but it tastes damn good. So let that be a lesson to you: is if you don't have Larceny bourbon on your shelf, you're messing up. Although I should probably clarify, none of this is paid for, advertised. I'm just bored. Maybe someday they'll actually sponsor me. I don't really care. But otherwise, I'm gonna call it a day. Next time, sweet. Who knows? Whenever I do this again, I think we'll stick to a rye. It's gonna be already open because that's what I'm working with. This is the only open one I didn't have. So next week we're gonna talk about ryes, and until then, whatever you got on hand, keep sipping. That was lame.